The Republic is Plato's sequel to the Gorgias, and opens with a request for a definition of justice. The idea that justice is telling the truth and paying one's debts is rejected, since no list of types of action could tell us what it is about an action that makes it just. Furthermore, the idea that justice is doing good to one's friends and harm to one's enemies is rejected also, since doing harm to another person would only make that person more unjust, and we have no way of determining what it is to do good in the first place. Socrates' first interrogator, Thrasymachus, contends that justice is a concept made by the ruling class for their own purposes, and that it is in fact more profitable to do what is unjust than what is just. Socrates responds by arguing that the art of ruling, if it is true art, must be for the benefit of those upon whom it is exercised, just as the art of medicine is for the benefit of patients rather than for that of doctors. Socrates then claims that restraint between people is a condition of their well-being, that there is a human virtue, the exercising of which leads to well-being and happiness. The Republic in general is an attempt to explain this claimed connection between virtue and happiness. Socrates' students, Glaucon and Adeimantus, take up Thrasymachus' case and suggest that natural men are moved entirely by self-interest, and that laws come from man's understanding that it is more to their benefit to forego doing injury to one another than to continue in their natural way of life. They argue that if men could avoid the ill consequences of their actions, they would act in accord with their self-interest, which is to say that everyone prefers injustice to justice if they can be unjust successfully. How can justice in itself be more profitable than injustice? To answer this question, Plato needs a definition of justice in both the state and in the individual. He outlines a state in which all basic needs are met, consisting of three classes of citizens: artisans and labourers to produce the material needs of society, soldiers to defend the state, and rulers to organise its social life. The main point to note is that Plato distinguishes not just the functions of a state, but also the classes of citizens needed to discharge such functions. Plato bases this distinction on two assumptions. The first is that it is better for each man to stick to one job only, and the second is that all men are naturally divided into Plato's three classes. This latter statement is a dubious one, but we can be lenient with Plato since we do certainly know that different people have different capabilities. Furthermore, Plato bases his tripartite formulation of the state on a related conception of the tripartite soul or mind. The argument for the tripartite soul starts by acknowledging that the mind often conflicts with itself, such as if a man desires to drink because he is thirsty, but does not desire to drink because he suspects the condition of the water. From this, Plato reasons that there must be a distinction between the parts which desire and do not desire to drink. He calls these parts the appetitive, which consists of non-rational desires, and the reasoning, which is a rational review and restraint upon the desires. Plato further separates the soul with a third aspect, which he calls the spirited. The spirited part of the soul is concerned with the standards of honourable behaviour and indignation towards that which does not come up to it. The part of the soul that is dominant in a man determines which class he falls into. Of the four traditional virtues, courage, wisdom, temperance, and justice, an individual is courageous if his spirit rules in him, wise if his reason rules in him, temperate if his appetite is ruled by his reason, and just if his soul is well ordered in general. Courage is the required attribute of the guards, and wisdom is the required attribute of the rulers. The state is temperate if its citizens are temperate, and just if everyone knows their own place in society. The just man will rarely exist except in the just state, and the just state cannot exist where there are not just men. Therefore, the question of how the just state can come about includes the question of how the just man should be educated. With this, Plato brings on stage the idea of the philosopher king, which is to be discussed in the next video.